This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi show number 367. This is your spoiler-free place for Star Wars discussion, analysis, and rhetoric. I'm your host, Dan Z, drinking One Nation coffee out of my Celebration Chicago Boba's Beans coffee mug. I thought that would be particularly appropriate because today we have Clayton Sandell and Drew Taylor on to discuss the Season 2 premiere of The Mandalorian. This episode is titled The Marshal. It is a fantastic episode, so let's get right to it. Pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to look at the Season 2 debut of The Mandalorian episode titled The Marshal, spelled with one L, is two of your favorites from the world of Star Wars, Coffee with Kenobi, and the Twitterverse. First, let's bring in Clayton Sandell.
Gentlemen, how are you? I'm in the presence of two distinguished authors here, and I'm feeling a little inadequate here. And I must admit, I'm drinking iced tea and not coffee. I feel, in full disclosure, I should let you know that.
Your candor, as always, is appreciated, good sir.
It's good to talk with you guys.
Yeah, you too.
No, I just said I miss you guys.
Oh, I know. I agree. We were just talking before the show about how much fun we all had on that covering Star Wars panel at Celebrations. I think this is the first time the three of us have been on a show together like this since that event. But you heard another voice in the background. He is someone who's never in the background, and that's one of the reasons we love him, Mr. Drew Taylor.
Hi, how are you guys? I was going to say, Clayton, the closest I've seen to come to running into you is when I ran into George Pinocchio's at Baja Fresh. So that's really that is the only thing that that's as close as I've come to getting to say hello to you in these past 8 months. So yeah, that's all I've got.
We should change it. 6 degrees of George Pinocchio.
Yes. So Clayton, let's start with you. When you first saw the debut episode or the premiere episode of The Mandalorian Season 1, we loved it, but it was just sort of hard to kind of wrap our heads around it. But then you watch the entire season, and we fall in love with this character, with this world, this aspect of the Star Wars universe on a streaming service. So how did that anticipation lead up to the premiere of Season 2, and what did the episode do for you?
Yeah, I remember watching that first season, that first episode, and watching that first episode like 7 times in a row, trying to, like you said, get your head around it. I wasn't so sure about Ludwig's music. And it was just so different, but ultimately came around and was very much Star Wars in really in that episode, but in subsequent episodes. I think it just took me a little bit to get into it. This, I was all in. I was ready to go, and it didn't disappoint. I loved the episode. I thought it was terrific. There's so many aspects to it. I'm sure we'll talk about, but it was
sure.
It hit, I think, on all cylinders. Everything that I was sort of unsure about in that first season, I was looking forward to in this one.
Beautiful. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Drew, what about you? How did you? I mean, I'm sure the hype was huge in your mind and in your home to get ready for this episode. Did it live up to your expectations? What'd you think?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I need to watch it again because I had to watch it at midnight, because we should say that unlike last year, there are no screeners going out for these new episodes. So I was a little exhausted, but I still loved it. I mean, who would have thought that, we would have had an episode of a Star Wars TV show that is essentially a deep space remake of Tremors? Not me. And I'm glad that it's here. I love that. So yeah, I just thought it was a lot of fun.
I would say that this is the ultimate episode of The Mandalorian. I'm not going to say it's better or worse than any of the others, but this had everything. It had action, it had nostalgia, it had the complexity of the title character, it had some cute little the child moments, and then I had some knock your socks off an ending that is just unforgettable, and special effects they're out of this world. And Clayton, talk about the special effects. We had you on, a month or two ago to talk about special effects in Star Wars. And I brought this up on Facebook Live tonight. Now that we know sort of how the sausage is made, and we've seen the facility where they create the Mandalorian and create these groundbreaking special effects, when you're watching this, now that you know how it works, does that distract at all to you, or did it work just fine?
No, I think if anything, it kind of gives you an appreciation for what they are able to pull off. And I'm glad you brought up the visual effects, because I thought this episode really was stupendous in terms of, and it's not just the Krayt Dragon battle, which was obviously the big epic set piece and effects piece, but even well before that, when we're first introduced to the dragon, I thought that sequence where it sort of comes underneath the main street, such as it is in this town, and that I thought it was just a spectacular effect. All of this moving sand that sort of liquefies as it comes through, and then just sort of stops as the dragon keeps moving. I thought all of those visual effects were movie quality for sure. I mean, they were right up there. So I thought it was visually just a tremendous effort.
Stunning.
Do we know if they used the virtual backgrounds any less? Because if so, this is even more of a accomplishment if they really didn't go on location at all and just shot all this in a warehouse in downtown LA, because the vistas and everything are really, it's really stunning, right?
They're absolutely stunning.
Well, the vistas and the mix of the buildings and all of that. Yeah, no, I thought it was a good mix.
Yeah.
I did too. I just sort of assume none of it's on location just because of what we've seen. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to find out. But Drew, obviously we're talking about the special effects, but from a place of cinematography, I feel like what this show is doing, whether it's on location or on a set in a warehouse somewhere, it's absolutely stunning that this is something that is not made for the big screen, but it very much is shot that way, isn't it?
Well, can we talk about one of my favorite moments in the show? When the aspect ratio changes towards the end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so cool. And it was such an unexpected little flourish. And I don't think that I think Favreau is a very solid filmmaker. He's obviously an amazing sort of technical craftsman. He doesn't have a lot of style to his filmmaking, but to me, this was an absolutely unbelievable sort of stylistic flourish that was in there that was totally unexpected and so awesome. And I love that moment.
It was sharp because it didn't feel, I feel like I said this a lot about Star Wars, especially over the last few months, but it didn't feel like a gimmick. It felt like a legitimate artistic choice that worked and sort of helped to explain the grandiose nature of what was happening. So right. Clayton, let's just talk about the beginning sequence of this episode where we first see the Mandalorian and the child walking down this dark street all the way up to the opening title sequence. Tell me, Clayton, kind of your overall thoughts on that, and give us a letter grade for the episode too.
Oh yeah, okay. So I loved there were so many like weird callbacks for me watching this episode. Starting at the very beginning with those red eyes in the dark reminded me of the glowing eyes on Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland. You know, it was just like this cool, creepy thing as they were walking down the street. I loved the graffiti on the walls, and I'm sure people have. In fact, I went on Twitter last night to ask if anybody had started to decipher some of that Arabic, and of course people are. You see like what looks to be like, I don't know, snow troopers and droids, and there's kind of a C-3PO looking thing in there, and an R2 kind of unit, which is all sort of fascinating, kind of wondering what's going on there. But we just get a tiny glimpse of that. And then they go in as to these Gamorrean Guard fights, which are amazing. And one thing about the start of that scene that I loved is the music. There was this weird Danny Elfman Nightmare Before Christmas kind of vibe to it that I thought worked really well, and was sort of weird and offbeat, but I thought fit the scene terrific. And I love the crowd. I always love these scenes, like the cantina scenes, where you just get this weird mix of all of these different humanoids and aliens all kind of coming together. And there was one in particular that in my head canon is Bulio from The Rise of Skywalker. You know the guy I'm talking about? It's like a second long shot, the guy with the horns who gets beheaded in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
In my head canon, that's him watching this Gamorrean guard fight, which is, a little bit of foreshadowing, because he is watching them go at it with axes. And so in my mind, he's sort of, anyway, getting a glimpse into his future.
Dramatic irony.
I'm just shocked you know a character's name from The Rise of Skywalker. after that movie, I just drug it on over to the recycling bin and it's gone. So I appreciate that you actually know the character's names.
Thank you, Wikipedia.
Or what do you mean? It's in the Star Wars book, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I got it in the Star Wars book. Yeah. Exactly. And then overall, I love the sound design, especially when he gets into this fight with all these baddie henchmen types, and the one in particular where one clocks him in the head, and it just makes this deep bell ringing sound when he gets smacked up the side of the head. So I would say the pre-title sequence and the entire episode for me gets a A to A-.
Oh, very good. Drew, what about you? There's a lot of great standout moments in just a very, very short amount of time. But what kind of stands out for you and helps to kind of create this atmosphere of, hey, welcome back. We're in season 2 of The Mandalorian. Here's sort of a greatest hits of The Mandalorian. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great sort of primer, but I also loved what I like about The Mandalorian is it sort of makes things that aren't cool again. Like all the nods to to episode 1 and the prequels is very cool. If you're, living in a basement somewhere reading the Aftermath novels voraciously, you've got all that stuff going on.
Why do you have to talk about me like that? I'm right here.
I know. I didn't mean to single you out, but but it kind of has this great it's like this Star Wars bouillabaisse, and it makes all these cool, old lame things cool again. And if you don't have an encyclopedic knowledge or have not co-authored the Star Wars book, I think it's just as enjoyable, probably. And I just love that. I love that it's just this like Star Wars remix album. It was really fun to get into that world again. Now I think that there are going to be like characters from Shadows of the Empire showing up or something like that, so
Prince Zizor
I'm really
in
ready
there.
for Dash Rendar to have his, his big moment.
Yeah, he was wearing a Gamorrean costume. I would say Gamorrean, but it's Gamorrean, I guess. Whatever. So you actually bring up a good point. I'm as shocked as anyone that you've brought up a good point. But there's something interesting here because today in school, someone said to me, I was a little frustrated with today's with the new episode, and I asked him why, and he said, well, I feel like you have to be like a super fanboy to know all this stuff, like about the Pearl, and he started, he starts mentioning all this stuff. He goes, I didn't even know that was Boba Fett's armor. He just started going on and listening to all these things. But do you guys, what do you think about that? Before I get to my thoughts in the opening, personally, I feel like the Easter eggs are just that. They add to the enjoyment of it if you want to go that direction, but I don't think you needed them to really appreciate the power. Even at the end, if you're not sure what's going on, you still recognize because of the aspect ratio, Favreau's telling us, hey, this is important. You may not know why, but this is important. Clayton, what do you think?
I thought the episode was it fan service to the highest level? Yes. Did I care? Not really. And the thing about, I had to go look up some of these things because there were, there's chatter about where he got this story. And, I guess it goes back to Knights of the Old Republic. This was a thing where you team up with the game where you had to team up with sand people and go and kill the crate dragon and recover the pearl. And so that was a little over my head. I remember getting to that scene, and I was watching it the second time around with my wife and son and my daughter. We were all kind of watching it, and everybody kind of went, what's with the pearl? it kind of had this. They were wondering if this was like the season 1 episode where they killed the Mudhorn and recover the egg. Like, is it something? What's going on? So that was a little over my head. I guess,
but it didn't distract from your enjoyment of like kind of what was going on.
No, I guess not. But there are things that they do that are a little puzzling. Like, I didn't think when R5 shows up, that was cool to see R5 sitting there. But then they had this sort of gratuitous shot of the part of his head or top where his motivator exploded, and it's like, okay, we get it. It was R5. I don't think you don't need to drill it home necessarily that it was we get it. It's the same droid. there was like sure. a lot of that sort of stuff.
Interesting. See, I feel like typically I think that sort of happened a little bit in The Rise of Skywalker, the show that Drew is in Drew's recycle bin. You may have to check your recycle bin.
I'll get it out of the recycling bin right now. Okay. Yeah.
Just right click. Okay, good boy.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that from this, although I can certainly see why that would happen. And I don't know. I just think that's something interesting to explore, because I feel like we're in this weird place where if we don't have callbacks, people get upset. But then if we do, people think something else entirely. But then there's the intelligent people like you, Clayton, who's like, you know what? You can do it, but you don't need to heavy hand it to us. Right?
Yeah. I think that's fair. That's fair.
I didn't know what that pearl was either, but I just sort of assumed that it was like, it just kind of fit in with the season 1, episode 2, where he's just doing some weird thing with a monster, and then the Jawas take, something from it. Like, it sort of fit. It's sort of like, this is like if there's a template to the Mandalorian, that is certainly part of the template, which is like, he goes to a weird planet, there's a crazy creature, and I don't know, the Jawas need an egg for something. It's like that's sort of now become part of the lexicon. So I had no idea I had to read about that pearl the next day, and I thought,
sure.
Geez, Dan Z is the only one that knows this kind of nerdy nonsense. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was the same way. It was like, okay, it didn't bother me too much. I figured, we know Favreau is kind of an EU. He makes some deep cuts, and so I figured it was some reference like that. But
and some of them were kind of fun to think about. Like, was the bartender one of the guys from Jabba's sail barge? Was Timothy Oliphant writing a part of Anakin's pod racer? Like, those were kind of fun
now,
questions.
If that's true, I will be disappointed.
Explicit answer.
Yeah, I hope that's not that. I had people sending me messages saying, "Hey, that's got to be Anakin's pod racer, right?" But I mean, I don't think so. I mean, why? If that is true, then I would be really put off by that, because that is too on the nose. You know what I mean? I mean, it's very possible there are lots of other pod race engines on Tatooine. It's certainly supposed to be a callback, or to make you think about that is really, really fun. But is that the exact one? I have a hard time kind of buying into that aspect of it. I'm disappointed. You both could have said exactly.
I saw that. What did you say?
Instead of, we were talking about the pearl and the egg, you should have said exactly, not exactly. It would have been a little more dad joke-ish.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Yolk. Anyway. All right. So the great thing about the start of this episode for me is I very much feel like it establishes what we know about. First of all, the whole flashback of season 1 I thought was really well done, really well edited. And then you've got him strolling in. He got these overwhelming odds, so he's completely calm and cool. The child knows to hide inside the pram, and then, the whistling birds call back, and then he does this wonderful sort of Batman thing where he ties up John Leguizamo upside down, very much like in Batman Begins or Spider-Man panel from a Marvel comic. And he shows, I kept my word, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be nice about it. So he's got kind of an anti-hero with a heart of gold, and I thought this really set that up beautifully for people who... I can't imagine anyone who would watch this episode who hadn't seen all of season 1, but it very much shows you what we're going to play with here. And I think that, Clayton, is one of the most important aspects about The Mandalorian to me, about Din Djarin, is because he's not one-dimensional. He's not just some cold-blooded gun for hire, but there's a soul underneath that Beskar armor, and it's really, really stunning that we're able to sort of fall in love with him like this.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. I think we're starting to see what we, in any good story, we're starting to see how a character changes over time, right? Like we're starting to see with his arrival back on Tatooine, having been saved essentially by IG-11, right? In the finale of last season, now all of a sudden he lands on Tatooine and he doesn't chase off the droids that come toward his ship. There's a change. We're starting to sense a change, but he's not he's not this newer, softer Mandalorian. I kind of thought we were going down that road, like in last season, the episode that took place on the prison ship.
Yeah.
He one by one takes out the bad guys, and you think he's killed them all. Well, he's actually just stuffed them in a cell somewhere, and allowed them to live. But then we get to the beginning of this episode, and he does a fairly sinister thing by shooting out the lights, and these creatures come out of the dark, and it doesn't end well for Leguizamo's character. So, but I do think we're starting to kind of see a little bit of an evolution in this character.
It's nice, and I'm glad you brought up that aspect of the droids, because I actually said to Mason out loud, "Hey, look at that! He's removed." It didn't say he removed the prejudice to my 7-year-old, but that's what I was thinking. It's the fact that we took that beat, which is really important in the finale of season 1. And they're running with it and allowing for, as you said, Clayton, so well, he's not like softer, but he's mellowed in some of his perspective on things, which shows real growth as a character, which is fantastic. So, Drew, we're on Tatooine. First of all, when you first heard, and any of you can answer this, when you first heard that we were going back to Tatooine, kind of what went through your minds? And Drew, we'll start with you.
It would be nice to have them go to a different planet, any other planet. I mean, there are literally dozens of Star Wars planets he could go to, but I guess he had to go back because of the Timothy Olyphant character. And I like that they gave us a different side of things. It wasn't just the kind of like yuck, we're back in Mos Eisley stuff. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was nice. Yeah.
So you liked it, but there was a party that was like, back to Tatooine again.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how much importance can this one dusty planet really hold in the Star Wars universe? As it turns out, a lot.
That's right.
So yeah.
Clayton, what about you? Tatooine, yay, nay, or whatever?
I didn't really care, but I will say when I was watching it with the family, my wife, when she heard Tatooine, she goes, "They're going back to Tatooine?" It was like, yeah, here we go. It was fine. It was, I thought this town that he goes to, Malpelga, something like that. Anyway, I thought it was fine to go back, but I felt like it was really, and I know, obviously Star Wars is kind of a space Western fantasy and all of that, but I felt like it really leaned heavily on the Western tropes, riding into town, seeing all the townsfolk kind of give them the side eye a little bit, including Sam Witwer. I don't know if you caught him.
Really?
Yeah, but it was sort of this. It felt very much like, I mean, with if you kind of narrowed your eyes a little bit, you could see horses instead of speeders. It was very. I just thought it really leaned heavily on the Western. Even the dialogue, the way it sounded, partner,
the Spurs,
the Spurs, yeah.
I really like that.
Which is Star Wars, yeah. I mean, it is definitely Star Wars. Yeah, but I guess I didn't really have any major objections to going back to Tatooine. I figured there had to be some reason for it.
Sure. Well, honestly, I was surprised at my reaction. We typically, when I go back to Tatooine, I just think, well, okay. For season 5 or episode 5 of season 1, I thought, well, okay. And they're even in the exact cantina, sitting in the exact same booth where Han was. I thought, that's a little too on the nose for me. Mm. But for some reason,
That's what we call a Filoni special, by the way.
Yeah. I was surprised at how excited I was. I actually had like this visceral reaction. My son stood up and he goes, "Daddy, we're going to Tatooine." And we high-fived because normally I'm sort of ambivalent to it. But this, for some reason, of course, there's all kinds of speculation in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety and other clickbait sites have seemed to have gone out of their way to kind of take away some of the luster of season 2. And while I knew that was in the back of my brain, I wasn't focusing on it. So to hear it actually confirmed when it's supposed to be confirmed, when you're actually experiencing the story, that blew me away. And I was thought, okay, we are going to have something that was talked about. And it thrilled me to no end. It gave me kind of an adrenaline push because there's a lot of ripe territory there as long as it's done, I think, with purpose and not just to go back to these nostalgia tropes. And I feel like it was pretty effective. So we go to Tatooine. We find out that the Mandalorian needs to go to a place that's not on any maps, which kind of reminded me of Episode 2 a little bit. But they have to go to Mos Pelgo. We go there, and then we have this wonderful introduction of a new character, Cobb Vance.
I mean, he was in Scream 2. I think that was his breakout role.
That was Scream 2, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
I remember him from Go.
Yeah, Go was a big one. More recently, he was in a great show called Justified. And he's in Fargo right now. So he's in 2 huge shows at the same time, which is pretty great. But
well, they really played up the Western motif, I think, to perfection here. He was the only character, I will say, that I felt like I was watching acting. I wasn't watching just sort of a performance, but I felt like he was acting. That being said, I thought it was still effective. Clayton, what do you think of this character and the performance?
Yeah, well, I loved this. This is one thing I did love this scene when they reveal the Marshal and he walks in, and this is, I think, a testament to, and I hope it's Pedro in the armor this season a lot more than he was last season. I don't know if it was him in this particular sequence, but the body language of this scene and the Mandalorian really stood out to me because the Marshal walks in and you can just tell by, I don't know if it's the stance or the tilt of the head or what, but you know that the Mandalorian knows that this dude is not the real deal. Mm-hmm. And he, by the way, he just sort of stands there at the bar without walking over to the table. And when Vance takes off his helmet, there's this just great scene as the Mandalorian's like walking towards the table, and just like it just is stopped dead in his tracks because somebody is taking off their helmet in front of him, and that is obviously the final straw here. But I thought that whole reveal and the body language between the two characters was just so well played, and like I said, I really hope it's Pedro in that scene.
I did too, because I thought that the tension that they were able to create here right before we hear the rumblings of the crate dragon, I thought was fantastic, and it creates this moment where you're just not sure what's going to happen. It's a showdown you've been wanting for a while. I think once he starts to talk, the way he's carrying himself, that it feels like, at least to me, it felt like Cobb Vance is not Boba Fett, at least that, as you're watching it for the first time. But then you're looking at the armor and you're like, well, I'm pretty sure that's it. It just looks different, but it's because it's a different, there's a different height.
Yeah, and the fit is all wrong. And it's very clear from the fit that this is not the Boba Fett we're used to. This is clearly an imposter.
Absolutely. And even his posture, like the way he carries himself. And like, as you said, I hope this is Pedro Pascal as well, because he's able to do so much without being able to make a facial expression, because he's got that helmet on all the time. But the way that he's very much like, take it off. And he's just not going to back up. We know the Mandalorian is not going to give up, because he's like Indiana Jones tenacious. So I thought that was a fantastic sequence to set up. And then they throw in the sprinklings of the child just for a little bit of comedic relief to lighten the tension. And the way that they handle Drew, the way they kind of get out of this and introduce us to the threat of the crate dragon, I thought was an excellent piece of storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is so great, too, because, even my wife, who's not the biggest fan, she has yet to co-author a Star Wars book. She knew when he took his helmet off that, this is not like a real Mandalorian, because they won't do that, which was another fun piece of, like, storytelling, right? Since we've been so indoctrinated in this Mandalorian culture over the past 8 episodes, we know the instant he takes off his helmet that something is wrong with this guy, that he's like a charlatan or whatever.
Right.
But can we also talk about the fact that Baby Yoda was like totally unnecessary in this episode and could have just been at like, you know, Aunt Jane's house or something the whole time, because Baby Yoda did nothing. He hid in a bucket, which was cute. They show production art at the end of the episode of him interacting with one of those little like,
Womp
you know,
rats.
Tatooine squirrels or whatever they are.
Womp rats.
And he literally had no place in that episode. He didn't do anything. He didn't use the Force. He didn't kill a Jawa. He didn't do anything.
Yeah, the most interesting thing it seemed to me he was doing was just studying, for example, the Gamorrean Guard fights, and seemed to be studying what the Sand people were doing. But yeah, he really was just kind of window dressing, cute window dressing.
I was kind of relieved by that, though, to be honest, because with all this merchandising onslaught and obviously how he's taken over popular culture, it was nice to see that they're not going to lean too heavily on that button, because it's only effective if it's not overdone. So the fact that he's there, he's still an integral part of the story. But this wasn't his story. This wasn't about him. So I thought it was, would I have liked to see something a little more meaningful besides a couple of cute sequences? Yes. But I think it worked as long as that doesn't become the norm, and I highly doubt that it will.
Well, I wonder, did no one get the, like, if there's a, like, APB out on this child and this bounty, did nobody pick up that signal in Tatooine, a planet almost exclusively populated by scumbags and kind of underworld characters? Seems a little weird. The Mandalorian is kind of upfront about having this child that everyone in the galaxy is supposedly after, just in a, fanny pack on his bike the whole time. It just seems sort of weird that nobody tried to grab him or something. Well,
isn't it wonderful though that we are able to use that and kind of evoke the strength of verisimilitude in story, because that's kind of part of his swagger and his appeal, because it's pretty clear to him that he knows better than anybody how much danger they're in, but he still kind of struts and does his thing, and he's able to do it in a style that's so cool, which is why I think the next part that we're going to talk about, we'll go ahead and take a really quick break. We're going to talk about the Mandalorian, how he carries himself with the natives of Tatooine. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Away creates thoughtful products designed to change how you see the world. They started with the perfect suitcase, crafted with features that make travel more seamless, and now, when even the familiar looks different, you can count on Away's range of essentials to solve real travel problems whenever you take that next trip. And I, of course, have Away luggage that I take with me everywhere I go, whether it's on an airplane, on a train, when I'm just going up north to Chicago to see my family. It's wonderful because their luggage is so great at organizing. It has a way for you to keep your phone charged. It's very, very durable and just easy to navigate through crazy city streets or what have you. These days, travel looks different, but no matter where you need to go, Away offers a range of suitcases and other travel products made of different materials like polycarbonate, aluminum, and durable nylon in a variety of colors and sizes. So whatever you need to bring with you, Away has luggage that will help make your next trip more seamless. Again, when I took this when I was at Disney World, or when we were going to the premiere last year for The Rise of Skywalker, my Away luggage was great at weaving in and out of airport terminals and trying to catch our next airplane, going through the streets of Hollywood. It's just so good the way that they are able to create this rugged, durable luggage that looks really, really classy and is so easy to navigate. It's something that I really, really appreciate. And I think you're going to appreciate them too, especially all of Away's suitcases, which are designed to last a lifetime with durable exteriors that can withstand even the roughest of baggage handlers. Every single suitcase comes with an interior organization system that includes a built-in compression pad to help you pack more in, and a hidden and removable, by the way, laundry bag that separates your dirty clothes. You've got 4 360-degree spinner wheels that guarantee the smoothest roll, even through the most hectic of airports and stations, and it is a TSA-approved combination lock that keeps all of your belongings safe. Away products are designed to last a lifetime. If any part of your suitcase breaks, Away's standout customer service team will arrange to have it fixed or replaced. There's a 100-day trial on everything Away makes. Take the product out on the road, live with it, travel with it, even get lost with it for 100 days. If you decide it's not for you, You can return any non-personalized item for a full refund during that period. No ifs, ands, or asterisks. Away offers free shipping and returns on any order within the contiguous U.S., Europe, Canada, and Australia. Start your 100-day trial and shop the entire Away lineup of travel essentials, including their best-selling suitcases at awaytravel.com/CWK. That's awaytravel.com/CWK. Again, you can start your 100-day trial and shop the entire Away lineup of travel essentials, including their best-selling suitcases at awaytravel.com/CWK. That's awaytravel.com/CWK. MEI and Mouse Fan Travel is your one-stop shop for your vacation needs and your plans to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or the cruise lines. Travel looks much different now than it did a couple of months ago, and with the opening of Walt Disney World and soon, hopefully, the opening of Disneyland, you need a place to go where you can trust, and they will help you figure out and navigate all the different circumstances and guidelines that Disney has put out for you. And I can say that we had our vacation modified, and as soon as dates were announced, MEI contacted me directly to help me reschedule, which is exactly what I was hoping to do. So if you are interested in rescheduling your vacation or want to try to plan a Walt Disney World, Disneyland vacation, or anywhere else you want to go on the planet, be sure to contact MEI and Mouse Fan Travel at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. Their signature service and expert advice will help you maximize your vacation time and dollar, and they will help you figure out all the different changes and modifications going on at the Disney theme parks. They are amazing, and I can tell you, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, the peace of mind that Becky Menken and the crew at MEI and Mouse Fan Travel have given me is invaluable. If you're interested at all, again, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel. We are back, and we are going to talk about when we got the threat of the Crate Dragon, which I just want to say right now that is my second favorite part of this entire episode, that we actually get to see a Crate Dragon in a live-action Star Wars anything. We knew about these things from A New Hope. If you've read some of the literature, even like the Star Wars storybook that came out when the movie came out in 1977. We've heard about the lore of the Crate Dragon and Knights of the Old Republic and other things, and some of the George Mann myths and fables from the world of Star Wars. But Clayton, to see a Crate Dragon in action, I mean, of course, we knew about the Crate Dragon call because Obi-Wan Kenobi uses that to scare away the Tuskens in A New Hope. But to see this thing in action and the way that they use it, almost like a Jaws character at times, was absolutely thrilling.
Yeah, I was almost going to say it. I'm glad you just said it, because this episode was an homage to Jaws. There were several references to Jaws in this film, but especially the way that it moved, the way that one shot in particular when it sort of comes out of the sand and then kind of wobbles as it goes backwards down underneath. The surface was right out of Jaws. There were a couple other things, but I wanted to see more of it, to be honest. You know, I thought it, you know, as big as it is and all of that, I kind of wanted to see more, but it was definitely Jaws-like, and maybe that's the point, is that they didn't want to show it, and that you know, Jaws was so effective because they never showed the shark, so right. You never really had a sense of just how terrifying it was, other than it was scary. So, it was really cool to see it. I would have loved to seen a little bit more of it.
Well, sure, totally fair, and hopefully we will. And we certainly won't see any more of this one. But if of all the callbacks or the things that we see that's nostalgia based, I think it's going to be hard, at least for me, to ever top this thing, because of the scale, because of the scope, and the fact that Favreau directed this. And as you said earlier, Drew, he's so good at telling a story through visual effects. I thought completely nailed it. So, Drew, obviously, I mean, you've heard of the Crate Dragon, but
I thought, especially when they said crate, I thought this thing was on crate in The Last Jedi, because
spelled different.
As we all know, objectively, The Last Jedi is the greatest Star Wars in recent memory.
It's salt. I agree.
It's salt.
We finally agree with something.
But I thought, so I was like, oh, there was like this giant worm on crate. That would have been cool to see, you know, but so I had no idea what a Crate Dragon was. And then I had to research it. You know,
what do you think? Do you think it was cool?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a giant dragon coming out of the land. It was great, but I mean, I didn't have an emotional reaction like, "Oh, we're finally seeing the crate dragon," like you did.
Well, wow, it's so cool that I can edit out almost everything Drew says. It's going to be fun. All right. So then we get to this notion that we've got to defeat this thing. The Mandalorian says, you need to give him this armor. But that does not seem to be something that the Marshal is very interested in doing. But Cobb Vance eventually relents because they've got a bigger problem, and that is, of course, the Krayt Dragon. So I think the most important aspect about this to me, and Star Wars does this really, really well. It did that in Season 1. It's done that in a lot of different things. It's very Kurosawa-esque. But you've got to take people from different backgrounds and different races, different languages and cultures, and get them to work together. And gentlemen, for my money, the fact that there's so much sign language and emphasis on culture and understanding people that speak differently and talk differently from you and not resorting to violence to solve your problems. The fact that the Mandalorian, who we've established is definitely not someone you want to trifle with, the fact that he uses language and culture and an appreciation without putting himself above others, I think is why this series is so incredibly special. Why I am proud to show it to my children, because I think that is something that we all could use a real dose of.
It was also just like that episode in the first season, right?
But so much
the
more
Bryce Dallas
so.
Howard episode.
So much more so.
Well, yeah, no, I thought it was great. I love that aspect of it, but it did feel a little bit like, oh, is this like another trope of these episodes, right? He goes to a weird planet. He kind of teaches the natives how to fight. I think what would be interesting is if he returns to one of these planets and maybe his, indoctrination and how to combat these creatures has maybe gone overboard, and the society has sort of like, descended into chaos and everyone's murdering each other. And, but that might not be Disney Plus friendly, but, these things should have some ramifications, and I think it'll be interesting if they kind of come back to some of these scenarios later in the show.
I hope they do, and I also think it's very important to note that the actor who interacted with Pedro Pascal is actually deaf in real life, and I think that's even more important to this episode too.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to the point where now people are talking about creating much like fans have done with Klingon. They want to create an entire Sand People sign language. Wow, how about that? Yeah. All right, so we get it. How about the sequence too, where he encounters the Tuskens, and anybody who's a dog lover, I think, can appreciate what happens. Yeah, there was a I don't know if it was an editing mistake or what, but you see as he approaches this creature, sort of this weird dog-like creature coming, he pulls something from his belt, almost like he's going to give it a treat. Mm-hmm. But we never get the payoff. They either cut it or something. But he appears to be taking some sort of treat to get ready to give this thing, and but you never get to see him toss it. I expect him to, maybe I didn't expect him to make the thing roll over or anything like that. But I did expect him to actually give it to the thing, and I never saw that happen. But
that's true. That's true. But it still perpetuates or it attempts to eliminate this myth of redemptive violence that's so prevalent in most of our popular culture. And I just love that aspect of it.
Yeah, that was very cool. It was a very, very different approach to the Tusken Raiders than we saw in 1977, for sure. Different times.
Absolutely. So then we, as they're going on their little joyride, Drew, I believe you posted a picture of, what did you say? You going to get a Pepsi at the gas station?
Oh no, yeah, no. Going to get a $1 McDonald's Coke, and then it was the picture of them on their little jet skis on the way to fight the dragon.
I thought that was pretty funny. That was really funny. Talk about the flashback, Drew. Since you are new to some of the stuff of of Tatooine. I'm assuming you haven't read Aftermath based on your glowing recommendation earlier.
I haven't read Aftermath, but I love Jawas. They're like my favorite Star Wars creature. I was born in '83, so my first toy was one of them that I remember was a stuffed Jawa that had eyes that lit up. That I am assuming was a piece of Return of the Jedi merchandise. So I love Jawas. I think they're so funny. I loved the second episode of the first season was my favorite from that season because there were so many Jawa hijinks. So I just loved that whole interaction with him and fleeing the town and getting picked up by the sandcrawler and all of that stuff. I just loved. I thought it was so funny and cool and it sort of gave necessary backstory without sort of burdening the episode with too much of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really great.
Star Wars has rarely kind of gone to flashbacks. In fact, I remember before we saw The Force Awakens that there was actually some talk that made it onto social media about how the Star Wars doesn't do flashbacks. But we've seen it a couple times. And Clayton, I felt like it was an effective part of storytelling, but it also kind of shows us, because I still kind of feel like, and I think this is intentional, that Cobb Vance is something of an unreliable narrator. But I mean, how far do you think you can trust him based on what we saw in the flashback?
Based on just my, I've not read the books. I didn't know much about this character at all. But apparently, I think you're right. He is a bit of an unreliable narrator. I think there's different versions of the story of how he actually got that armor. And the flashback, it's. I thought it was a little clunky. It does seem out of place. To me, and I don't know if there's a better way to do that or not. But to me, it just sort of brought the episode to a weird pause. And I think the other thing that bothered me was that they're having this conversation, or he's telling this story as they're speeding across the desert, but speaking in regular volume talking voices, like they're sitting in a studio in Manhattan Beach. Like it just didn't ring all that.
Yeah, I can't hear my wife if she's across the apartment. I can't imagine what the sound of those turbines would be.
You also can't see explosions in space either. So this is Star Wars, not Star Trek.
I thought that whole sequence was a little bit awkward.
That's fair. What I like about it is I feel like without that sequence, I don't really necessarily care about Cobb Vance, because I feel like I needed a little bit more to buy into the fact that he was someone that we should trust. Just wearing someone's armor awkwardly isn't enough of a reason. So the fact that he at least attempts to bring in a little bit about who he is or why we should care about him, tries to open the door to pathos, which I think otherwise you're not going to care when it looks like he might be killed later. So I think that was just an important part of the storytelling aspect. So
the other cool thing. Go ahead.
No, you first.
Well, I was going to say, I assume you were going to get around to it soon, but the other thing that happened at about this point in the episode, which we have been waiting desperately 4 decades to find out, is that the pointy part of a gaffy stick is actually a toothpick for a band.
That was hysterical. That was like a fun little random little thing. The only other thing I want to say about Cobb Vance is that I did read Aftermath, and it's Chuck Wendig wrote them. They're exceptional books, especially the second one is about Han going back to Kashyyyk to help Chewie liberate the Wookiees, and it's all in canon, all part of the story. It's tremendous. I think you would love it, Clayton, honestly. But the way these books work, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this online, is that in between certain chapters they have little interludes about characters that you don't really know who they are, what the context is, although there is one about Jar Jar that's kind of interesting. But we get to see sort of slowly throughout the 3 books a little bit about Cobb Vanth, how he ends up with the Boba Fett armor, and it's sort of unclear in the novels if it's actually Boba Fett going under an alias or if it is in fact a different character. So I very much like that they portrayed that aspect of it into the introduction of him as well.
I like this idea of Boba Fett sort of like pulling small time cons, like, yeah, no, that's not my name anymore. Don't look over here. That's how I'm picturing Boba Fett now in this scenario of this book.
One thing I've learned over the past...
This is a perfectly legitimate slave one, I swear.
You sound like a gangster from The Simpsons.
Right.
Although I will say over the past few episodes of fine-tuning with Drew Taylor, I've grown to really appreciate your different accents. You're quite good at them, actually.
Oh, thank you so much.
For sure, honestly. All right, so we get to, I guess the only other main thing to talk about is the ending. I thought it was absolutely spectacular, truly cinematic in scope, in the peril, in the risk, in the way that they get rid of the Krayt Dragon. Speaking of Jaws, Clayton, I thought that was very much in the Jaws playbook.
Yeah, very. Even to the point, even including a Hitchcock zoom in there at one point.
Yeah.
On Cobb Vance. But even before that, when they were getting ready to go out, when they were packing up all the explosives, and there's the Tusken Raider drops the canister in the same way that Roy Scheider dropped the oxygen tank when they were on the boat and got yelled at because they were very explosive and dangerous and all of that. So there was a whole line of Jaws references. But yeah, the whole battle sequence was pretty spectacular. Yeah. And Pedro somewhere was talking about how this sequence, when he read the script, was sort of unbelievable. He wasn't sure how they were gonna pull it off, but just, I mean, again, it doesn't. I know that Disney and Lucasfilm are obviously putting a lot of money into these episodes, but I mean, these visual effects were like
another level.
Another level. I mean, absolutely, big screen worthy visual effects to pull off that entire sequence. Great shots. And
it was also fun to sort of see how the different jetpacks work and how although I wouldn't say that the Mandalorian is necessarily experienced, but he's got some sort of training, whereas Cobb Vance is just sort of a cowboy, literally and figuratively. But it was fun to see the differences in how they sort of portray that, and the fact that they're both trying to do what's best. And we didn't talk about this, but I do love when they're describing the scale and they use like little acorns or something or coffee beans to show them, and then show the scope and the scale of the Krayt Dragon. But overall, I mean, absolutely spectacular. At the end, I got to say, Drew, I was pretty surprised that he actually did surrender the armor. I mean, I figured that he would, but there was a part of me that thought the Mandalorian is not going to make him do it and say you earned it, but he didn't.
Yeah, I thought he was going to do that too, and I also thought that they were going to screw up killing the dragon at the cave, and then the dragon was going to go to the town, and so they'd all have to rush back to the town and try to defend it before it eats everybody in the town. But I thought the battle was great. It was a little familiar, like all those sort of references, but I also liked. I mean, it was still fun, and I liked him coming out of the mouth with that kind of. It almost looked like the kind of 80s, like when you see electricity in 80s movies, where it'd be sort of like hand animated. I love that it kind of had that herky jerky style, it was a lot of fun.
Pretty smart stuff. And speaking of him going, if the dragon were to go back to the town, when Cobb Vance, when he's trying to recruit everyone to work together, there's some great sequences in that. But when he talks about, hey, they're going to come for the school, and he was legitimately concerned, and that's when I thought, all right, even if this guy is a shyster, at least he does legitimately seem to care about these people. So I hope he's a character that we see quite a bit more.
To the teacher in your heart.
That's very much right. That's very much true. But I hope he's a character we see much more of. So Clayton said about A minus. Drew, I forgot to ask you for a letter grade. What would you give this one?
Yeah, I would say A minus. We still have to talk about the very, very ending, because I kind of have some weird issues with that.
Of course. Yeah, for the record, too, I would say this is an A+. I really can't find too many faults of this thing. I thought it was excellent storytelling, wildly entertaining, and something that I've enjoyed watching multiple times with my family. We got a big charge out of it. So, yeah, let's go ahead. Clayton, you had alluded to the aspect ratio shift. We certainly talked a lot about Fett throughout this, but Drew, we'll just start with you. Talk about the ending. What worked, what didn't?
Well, I thought it was cool to see Boba Fett. It's Tamora Morrison, who's a great Polynesian actor, and he has not played Boba Fett yet right? Canonically,
Right.
he's only been
just a voice.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
so he's only been Jango in the
voice,
prequels.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
And the
So that
voice,
was really-
In special edition.
In the special
yeah,
edition.
that's right. That's right. They dubbed him in. But so that was very cool to see him. There is a kind of like logic thing where it's like he's been on this planet and the community only has, a few dozen people. Has he never seen this armor before? Was it the armor that kind of put him off, or was it seeing another Mandalorian? It just sort of didn't make sense if he's been there for so long, why he didn't try to do something sooner. I mean, it's like, yes, Timothy Olyphant is very cool. He probably would not, put up much of a fight, though, if Boba Fett came to get his armor back. So that was the one thing that I was just sort of like, what's going on here? So I would love to hear you guys explain that to me, or if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I wasn't sure what he'd been doing all this time. We believe it's 6-7 years after he supposedly went down the Sarlacc
It'd
pit?
be 5. I don't know how much time takes place between seasons 1 and 2, but it's 5. The season 1 is 5 years after.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So it did raise a lot of questions. It's like, why didn't he go get this sooner? What's brought him out now? And the other thing is, Boba Fett is not technically a Mandalorian, right?
That's correct. That is correct.
So
okay.
so if it's not the armor, why would he necessarily care about an actual Mandalorian being on the planet? So like Drew, I had a lot of questions about why we're just seeing him now and what could possibly be motivating him to come out of whatever cave he's clearly been living in for the last 5 years.
Sure.
It sort of uncomfortably reminded me of the Solo cameo of Darth Maul, where Darth Maul just turns on his lightsaber for no reason on the hologram, just to make sure people understand who he was.
Remember, I'm the guy with that double-bladed lightsaber.
Yeah, I had to remember like a few years ago. I kind of got cut in half, whatever. Yeah.
You are Drew. You are my favorite cynic, I gotta say.
Well, no, I mean, there's a good way to sort of reintroduce things and pay homage, and there's sort of clunkier ways to do it. And I think that that final shot was aired on the clunkier side.
And I'm not usually the person that sees things coming from a mile away, but I think if you look at how Favreau had set up previous episodes with these cliffhangers, and like you knew that there was going to be something, and it just to me was pretty obvious that through the entire episode that you were going to see or have some answer to the real fate of Boba Fett at the end of this episode. I thought it was kind of an obvious way to end it.
Can you imagine, though, how thrilling it would have been if we didn't know that Tamir Morrison was cast? And the excitement that we would have felt if we didn't know that? Would have been great.
I had kind of forgotten it. So I guess, when I saw his face, like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
See,
I don't like what they did with Boba Fett in the prequels, so I'm still sort of like, it would be cool to still not know who was under that.
I agree.
Helmet.
I
and if
agree
it
with
was
that.
a British guy instead of why now Boba Fett has a New Zealand accent, it's like, okay.
Well,
We can't wait to go get Han Solo. It's like it doesn't quite work as well.
my app for placing dialogue just broke when you did that. Yeah.
Good.
I kind of thought that when I saw him, I didn't really think about why was he there or why wasn't there. To me, I thought, well, maybe this is the first time he's actually seen the armor. Maybe this is the first time he's doing it. For all we know, he's been wandering the desert. He's lucky to have survived. I mean, the Mandalorian tells us the only way a Sarlacc leaves is if someone eats the Sarlacc, which seems like an impossible thing unless you've got a Krayt dragon. So I like the idea that there's a lot of story here that we haven't gotten yet, and the fact that we've waited so long for it. And I will go on record, and I have many times, I'm not a big Boba Fett fan. I love the armor. I love how he looks in The Empire Strikes Back. I don't really care for him in Return of the Jedi. I don't really love him in Episode 2 either. But the fact that he's coming back and we're going to kind of extend the lore a little bit more and find out more about this and how it's going to work, and the fact that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are going to be the people to tell us that story, to me is absolutely thrilling, and I'm here for it.
It's going to be 400 episodes, and you're going to have to know every little bit of every culture in the Star Wars galaxy, and it's going to be very tedious.
Really do like not knowing. Like, I really do like not knowing, but if they're going to do it, then do it well. and I have faith that they're going to.
Either that, or that will be the last time we hear about Boba Fett in this entire series.
Wouldn't that be great?
You know, I thought that could be something. Like, what if we just never see him for the rest of at least this season?
That'd be great.
And that was just it. Yeah,
I would love
sure.
that. I would love that. I think that'd be. I don't think fans would go for that. Now, if that happens, I don't think it's going to happen.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is.
That's going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. It is a lot of fun, and you'll make some new friends as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. A big thank you to our CWK Alliance members, Mary Perdue, Jason Hall, Dennis Keithley, Ross Hollivan, Cato McNichol, Alexander Moylan, Jim Capron, Smooth Rivera, Tyler Pompa, Frank Mulder, Colby Mead, LJ Souter, Daz Davies, Dustin Mills, Robert Avila, Terry King, Jeff Ellis, David Nicely, Chris Gavarka, Angela Sauce, Aaron Harris, Greg McLaughlin, Eric Struthers, Christine Turk, Brian McKinney, Alex Procasio, Hannah, Susan Gray, Ian Thompson, Dan Ream, Christian Dale, JC Poe, Ed Kimoto, Blake Weaver, Chelsea Sansbury, Yancey Evans, Craig Hargrove, Chris Metz, Connie Shee, Mark Suter, Jared Cantor, Kurt McKellen, Thea Selby, and Simbat Defterdarian. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, live video, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, please feel free to reach out to me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com, and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR. There are also a lot of ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, and check us out on Pinterest. You can find me twice a month on the podcast Looking at Lucasfilm, part of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, and you can find my writing on CWK's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I'm an official blogger there, as well as on IGN, where I contribute articles on Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. And if you're considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and help you make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I'm also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. You can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our CWK sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. And don't forget to pre-order my brand new book that I wrote alongside Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, The Star Wars Book, published by DK. Be sure to pre-order your copy of the Star Wars book today. I can't wait to share it with each and every one of you. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word. Go to iTunes and search Coffee with Kenobi and you'll see the show there. My circle of friends has grown so much because of this podcast and each and every one of you, and it means so much to me that we have such a wonderful Star Wars community. Thank you all so much for all you do. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up here. Clayton, give us sort of your final thoughts overall on the episode.
I really, I thought it was a great setup. I think it shows that this season probably will have a similar vibe to the first season where the Mandalorian and the child kind of go from place to place, getting involved in these sort of side episode-long plots, while the overall story kind of advances slowly. So to me, it seems like the structure maybe the same, but I'm excited to see where it goes. I really am.
Very good. Drew, what about you? Last minute thoughts on this one?
Yeah. I mean, like Clayton said, this is not the most narratively sophisticated show on television. It's not when this was airing next to Watchmen last year, it was like, oh my god, this is like finger paint. But there is something sort of charming and fun about it, and it definitely, I like that it sort of plays into that whole sort of old-timey serial aspect of it. And if he wants to go to some weird planet and fight another beast, that's fine with me. It's sort of easy lifting, and that's okay sometimes.
So Star Wars has never been Hamlet. It's certainly not Watchmen, but it's never been like the upper echelon of sophisticated narrative points and buildings roman, but it is entertaining. It is a visual spectacle, and the fact that we've got characters and they're able to tie in nostalgia and take things in new and exciting directions with a spectacular ending and amazing music and beautiful cinematography, to me, made this really, really special and just a whole lot of fun. It's also
and honestly, what else are we doing right now?
Yeah, honestly, yeah, right. Let's have some fun. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
This is escapism at its finest tonight. I absolutely loved it so much. And as I've said before, I was never thrilled about the concept of this series at the beginning until I saw the first episode. Now I'm certainly in for the ride. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Of course, it's always great to hear from both of you. Drew, let everybody know the amazing things that you're up to. Certainly talk about Light the Fuse and all the wonderful stuff you've got going on in your world.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, you can listen to Light the Fuse if you love Mission Impossible. We talk to a different person each week, and actually, starting this week, we're talking to Michael Giacchino, who composed the score for Rogue One. Wow. So there's a little Star Wars crossover there, yeah. And you can find me on Twitter at Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt. And I thank you so much for having me, and I miss you guys, so it was fun to chat.
It was fun to chat.
I miss you guys too. Yep.
Oh my gosh, this is great. These little reunions on podcasts, I think, are really, really fun for people. Clayton, always fun, of course, to chat with you. Everybody loves following you on Twitter and things like that. But let us know what's going on in your world and where people can find you.
I got nothing going on, literally nothing. And they can find me on Twitter at Clayton_Sandell. And as always, I'm trying to be better on Instagram, but it's a slow process. At Clayton Sandell ABC on Instagram. See you there.
But you're great on Twitter. Everyone should follow you on Twitter.
Twitter's fun.
So,
yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You're both incredibly fun to engage with on Twitter and on the show. Thanks again so much for both of you being on, and thank you, everyone, for listening to and contributing to Coffee with Kenobi each week, whether it's the podcast or on social media with Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or you subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you are with me every Monday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. I appreciate so much you incorporating all of us into your Star Wars community. It's so much fun to share this galaxy far, far away with so many intelligent, passionate, positive people. Until next time, everybody, have a great week. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here.